So, uh, what if I told you that the absolute best way to achieve perfect posture is to just completely stop trying?
Oh, that sounds like a dream, honestly.
Right. I mean, we've all had that exact moment at some point in our lives. You know,
Yeah.
you're a kid, you're slouched over the dinner table, or maybe you're a teenager shrinking into the sofa,
Yeah.
and a parent or a teacher just sharply yells out, "Stand up straight."
Oh, yeah, and instantly you know the drill. You pull your shoulders backward, you aggressively lift your chest up toward the ceiling.
Yeah, you stiffen your spine until it basically feels like a steel rod.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
try to turn yourself into a soldier standing at attention.
It's just so ingrained in us, this whole idea of what good posture looks and, feels like. We just assume it requires this constant vigilance and hard work. But as I was diving into some really fascinating research notes this week on embodied movement, I came across a premise that completely shatters that assumption. The document is titled Standing on the Skeleton: Deep Muscular Tension and the Structural Alignment of the Spine. And I want to warn you right now, if you're listening to this deep dive, it's going to fundamentally change how you sit, how you stand, and just how you understand your own physical architecture.
It really does. It truly shifts the paradigm. I mean, it takes posture from being a chore, something you actively have to do to yourself, to being something that just naturally happens to you when the internal conditions are right.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the source material starts with this highly subjective, almost uh, magical sounding experience that advanced movement practitioners report.
Right.
When these people actually achieve true, perfect postural alignment, they don't describe feeling rigid or braced like we do when we
Uh-huh.
force our shoulders back.
Not at all.
They describe this amazing sensation where the body feels unusually light, like all of their superficial muscular tension just vanishes. They report this profound feeling that the skeleton alone is holding them up, completely effortlessly, like they're literally just standing on their bones, kind of floating above the ground.
It's a beautiful description of an ideal physical state, really, and
Yeah.
validating that subjective feeling is important because that sense of lightness is a very real physiological experience. But we do have to drop the central paradox of this research right here at the start.
Oh, right. The biomechanics part.
Yeah, because biomechanically speaking, bones alone absolutely cannot support the human body.
Right, because we aren't, a museum skeleton wired together with heavy metal rods and bolted to a wooden stand.
Exactly. Think about the actual human frame for a moment. The spine, the pelvis, the hips, the rib cage, these are all highly articulated structures. They're connected by movable, slippery joints meant to slide and pivot. So if you were to magically remove all the muscles from a human body while it was standing upright, it wouldn't just stay there perfectly balanced on the leg bones.
It would just be a disaster.
Total disaster. Without muscles, the pelvis instantly loses its stability and tips. The heavy bowling ball of the head falls forward, and the entire spine completely collapses into a pile on the floor. Literal skeletal support, like without muscular activity, is a mechanical impossibility.
So if it's mechanically impossible for the skeleton to hold itself up, but for these practitioners, it genuinely feels like the skeleton is doing all the work with zero effort, what is actually happening beneath the surface? I mean, if the bones aren't doing the heavy lifting, what is?
Well, to understand that, we first have to dismantle a very common myth about how the human body organizes itself.
I think I know the myth you're talking about, actually. We tend to think of the human body like a stack of rigid blocks.
Yes, the Jenga analogy.
Exactly. I've always pictured it this way. You just stack the heavy skull directly on top of the cervical spine, you stack the rib cage and spine on top of the pelvis, and you stack the pelvis perfectly over the knees and the feet. Just line up the blocks perfectly over your center of gravity like playing a game of Jenga, and boom, you don't have to use any muscle.
Right, but what's fascinating here is that the human body functions nothing like a stack of rigid Jenga blocks.
Not even a little bit.
Not at all. If we connect this to the bigger picture of biomechanics, the feeling of standing on the skeleton isn't actually an absence of muscular tension. It feels completely effortless, yes, but that is essentially a sensory illusion.
Wow. Okay.
What is really happening is the presence of a subtle, continuous internal tension. And this tension remains perfectly active even when all your outer superficial muscles are totally relaxed.
So when you look at someone with incredible, elegant posture, and their shoulders are incredibly soft and their neck looks completely relaxed, they aren't just magically resting on perfectly stacked bones.
No, they're not.
There's like a hidden network working overtime behind the scenes.
Working behind the scenes, yeah, but working incredibly efficiently. We're talking about the deep muscular system.
Yeah.
These are the muscles closest to the skeleton, the ones you can't see in a mirror, and frankly, the ones most of us never even think about. The research highlights a very specific interconnected network responsible for this subtle tension. We're looking at things like the iliac psoas, which connects your lower spine through your pelvis to your upper legs.
Right, so the muscles that essentially bridge the upper and lower halves of the body.
Exactly. And alongside those, we have the pelvic floor muscles. We have the transversus abdominis, which acts like a deep internal corset wrapping entirely around your waist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then we have the multifidus, which are tiny muscles running right up along the vertebrae of the spine. Add in the diaphragm, the deep fibers of the internal obliques, and the deep hip stabilizers, and you basically have this complete integrated system.
It's just like a secret society of muscles operating completely under the radar.
That's a great way to put it.
And I think this is so important for you listening to realize this is exactly why relaxing your posture shouldn't mean you just collapse into a puddle of mush on the sofa.
Right. Please don't do that.
Yeah, when you truly relax the outer body, these deep muscles are supposed to be the ones secretly doing the heavy lifting. They're designed to keep you upright while you feel completely at ease.
Precisely. You see, the outer muscles, your pecs, your upper traps, your lats, those are designed for dynamic movement. They evolve for picking things up, throwing, running, climbing.
Action muscles.
Action muscles. They're fast twitch and powerful, but they fatigue rapidly. They are absolutely not designed to be tense 24 hours a day just to hold you upright against gravity.
But that's what we make them do.
And that's why, when you use those superficial muscles for posture, you get exhausted and achy. When the deep, slow-twitch muscles take over, you feel that signature lightness.
I completely understand that we have these two different sets of muscles, but if I want to stand up straight right now, my brain instinctively tells my shoulders to pull back and my chest to push out.
Yeah, that's the default.
So what is this secret deep network doing that my superficial muscles aren't? Like, how are they mechanically different?
Well, notice the verbs you just used. Pull, push, force. Those traditional posture cues all require active, conscious forcing from the outside in. Our source material uses a brilliant analogy to contrast these two methods. They call it the sail and mast analogy.
Oh, this is the part of the paper that really made it click for me.
It's so good.
If you imagine that your spine is the mast of a ship, conventional posture is like trying to force that wooden mast straight by pushing against it with your bare hands.
Which is wild if you picture it.
Right. You're standing on the deck just shoving the wood, hoping it stays upright.
Which is incredibly unstable and requires constant, exhausting effort. But this paper suggests the deep muscular system acts like the supporting cables, the rigging of the ship. When the tension is perfectly even and all the cables pulling from different directions, the mast naturally stands upright in the dead center. It doesn't need to be pushed.
And it brings us to a crucial biomechanical distinction. These deep muscles, this internal rigging, they don't function by pushing the body upright at all.
No, they don't.
Instead, they draw the skeletal structure inward toward the center of the body.
Exactly. They generate a continuous inward pull. And the why here is critical to understanding everyday pain. When these internal cables, these deep muscles, weaken or simply, go to sleep because we sit rigidly in desk chairs for 8 hours a day, that inward drawing completely stops.
And because the body still has to keep you from falling over, it sort of panics and uses whatever is available to keep the mast from snapping.
You nailed it. Without the deep cables, your body defaults to the outer muscles to brace you against gravity. The mast starts to lean, so the outer muscles grip fiercely. We start to see excessive spinal flexion, that rounded, hunched upper back that so many office workers have.
Or the opposite, that deep, painful C shape in the lower back.
Lumbar extension, yes. The superficial lower back muscles are gripping for dear life to prevent you from falling forward. We see the classic forward head posture, where the neck muscles are straining like crazy to hold up a 12-pound skull, and we see profound pelvic instability.
So, when my lower back is screaming at 3 in the afternoon after a long day of standing or sitting, it's not necessarily because my lower back is weak and needs to be strengthened.
Probably not.
It might be because the internal cables, the psoas, the transversus abdominis, they aren't drawing inward. So my superficial lower back muscles are desperately doing a job they were never meant to do.
That is exactly it. Your lower back is trying to push the mast up because the stabilizing cables have gone slack. The pain is a symptom of exhaustion, not weakness.
Wow. Okay, so if this cable system works for the spine, It begs the question, what happens to the rest of the body? Does this inward pull just stop at the waist? Because this source doesn't just stop at the torso.
No, it goes much further.
Yeah, this concept of inward pulling seems to apply to the entire human frame, from your toes all the way up to your skull.
It does. And this brings us to a concept you might be familiar with from architecture and structural engineering called tensegrity. Tensegrity is a portmanteau of tensional integrity.
Right, so for anyone trying to visualize this, think of those bouncy desktop toys or, baby toys with the wooden dowels suspended in midair by a rubber band.
The squish toys.
Yeah. The woody sticks never actually touch each other, but the whole structure is incredibly strong. If you press down on it, it bounces right back.
Exactly. In a tensegrity system, you have compression elements, which in our body are the bones, and you have tension elements, which are the muscles, fascia, and connective tissue. They coexist to create global stability.
Okay.
So rather than relying primarily on skeletal compression, where heavy bone rests directly on heavy bone like those Jenga blocks, global stability emerges through an integrated network of continuous internal tension. The bones are essentially floating, suspended within the tension network.
And the research notes actually map out this tension line for us. It's not localized to just one area. It's not just engage your core, which we hear all the time.
Right.
I want you listening to try and feel this in your own body as we trace it. The researchers say this continuous internal tension line starts all the way down through the feet. It travels up the inner legs, deep into the hip joints.
And from the hips, it moves into the deep lower abdomen, traveling up behind the navel, engaging the deep obliques.
Yeah, and then it passes right behind the solar plexus, weaves through the diaphragm, and finally terminates all the way up into the cervical spine, your neck.
It's a single, uninterrupted, integrated system, and this is why tensegrity is so remarkable. If you pull on a rubber band at the bottom of a tensegrity structure, the tension instantly changes all the way at the top. The entire shape adapts. You cannot isolate one part of the body without affecting the whole.
Okay, I have to push back here, specifically on the neck part, the cervical spine.
Go for it.
Because I spend half my day at a computer, like most of us, and physical therapists are always telling us to consciously pull the chin in to fix tech's neck.
Ah, yes, the chin tucks.
We do chin tucks against the wall. We forcefully retract our heads back over our shoulders. But this tensegrity model seems to suggest that it's completely wrong. I mean, if the tension is a continuous line from the feet, I shouldn't be isolating, forcing my neck at all, right?
You've hit on one of the most counterintuitive yet liberating points in the research. In a tensegrity system, you never actively force the chin inward. Doing so just creates more superficial tension in the neck muscles. You're just pushing on the mast again.
So what happens to the head if I'm not supposed to actively hold it back?
Well, when that deep, continuous tension line from the feet all the way to the diaphragm is truly engaged, the entire head naturally settles slightly backward on its own.
Really?
Just on its own.
Yes. The cervical vertebrae just integrates into the overall spinal tension. The heavy lifting is distributed down the line, requiring absolutely zero muscular effort from the neck. So the head basically feels completely suspended.
Suspended is the perfect word. The skull literally floats on top of the mast because the cables below are perfectly tensioned.
This all sounds incredible. I mean, I want my head to float. I want to feel unusually light by 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I want to, stand on my skeleton.
We all do.
But if this perfect, effortless posture is an emergent property, meaning it's something that just happens naturally rather than something we can force, how on earth do we train our bodies to actually do it? I can't just command my transversus abdominis and deep hip stabilizers to turn on while I'm waiting in line at the grocery store.
Right, that would be impossible. This raises an important question, and it's where the practical application of this theory finally comes into play. You have to actively create the right physical environment, the right geometry for these deep muscles to wake up.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The source material points to two specific and honestly somewhat unusual postures that are used to facilitate this deep tension. First is the traditional Japanese squat, known as Sonkyo, and second is a gymnastic-style posture they refer to as the Comaneci posture.
Right.
Now, my immediate thought reading this was, I am trying to fix my posture while standing or sitting at a desk. Why would externally rotated hips and a deep squat be the secret keys to standing up straight? It seems entirely unrelated.
It does seem unrelated until you look closely at the skeletal geometry of those positions. Let's break down the mechanics of the Sonkyo squat first. This is a posture where you're squatting down very deep, often balancing on the balls of your feet with an upright torso.
Like a sumo wrestler getting ready.
Exactly. So what happens biomechanically here? First, the hips deeply flex. When that happens, the pelvis naturally finds its optimal center without you having to actively force a posterior or anterior tilt.
Oh, I see. I'm trying to picture this. If my knees are bent and I'm hovering inches above the floor, my pelvis has to be perfectly under my spine, or I would simply fall over backward.
Gravity forces the alignment. You can't cheat it. Next, because the pelvis is perfectly centered, the deep lower abdomen activates effortlessly. But crucially, and this is the key to the whole system, in this deep flexed position, the diaphragm, your primary breathing muscle under your ribs, aligns perfectly in a parallel plane with the pelvic floor.
The paper used this amazing visual of a piston, like the top and bottom of a cylinder in an engine.
Yes, the piston metaphor is vital here. When we slouch, our diaphragm tilts forward and our pelvic floor tilts backward. The pressure leaks out.
It's misaligned.
Completely. But when the diaphragm and pelvic floor are perfectly parallel, like a sealed cylinder, that internal pressure normalizes. That internal tension network, that central cable system, naturally engages to manage the pressure. The conditions are finally favorable for the deep system to emerge and take over.
Which makes total sense why it's so hard to take a deep, full breath when you're slouched over a keyboard. The piston is misaligned. Okay, what about this second one, the Comaneci posture? For those trying to picture it, think of the classic gymnastics dismount pose, like Nadia Comaneci's taking a landing, or even certain martial arts ready stances.
Right.
The hips are externally rotated, meaning your toes point outward, the knees are opened outward, and there's a slight bend in the legs.
The mechanics are remarkably similar to Sonkyo in their desired outcome. By externally rotating the hips and opening the knees, you mechanically put slack into the superficial muscles of the legs and hips, the big quads, the outer glutes.
So because the outer muscles are slacked, the deep rotators and stabilizers,
They have to step up and fire to keep you standing.
yeah, they have no choice.
They have no choice. It triggers a much deeper activation around the pelvic floor. It improves the tension running straight through the hip joints, and it essentially forces an inward integration of the pelvis and the lower abdomen.
So these poses are basically cheat codes to bypass the superficial muscles that usually do all the bossing around.
That's a fun way to look at it, yeah.
But I imagine the goal of these practices is not to walk around the office all day in a deep Japanese squat, or, stand at the water cooler with your hips externally rotated in a gymnastics pose.
No, please don't do that.
Yeah.
The posture itself is not the objective. These postures simply serve as preparatory positions. They provide the highly specific skeletal conditions for this internal tension network to finally wake up.
Because it's been asleep for so long.
For most of us, yes. Many of us have gone years without these deep cables firing properly. Once you feel what that deep inward drawing feels like in a squat, once you feel the diaphragm and pelvic floor parallel, you can start to maintain that subtle, continuous internal tension when you return to a normal, upright standing position.
You're basically retraining your nervous system. You're teaching your brain what the cables feel like when they're actually working, so you can find that feeling again when you're just, waiting for the bus.
Exactly. You are giving the body a visceral, felt experience of tensegrity. Once the nervous system recognizes how much more efficient it is, it wants to maintain it.
So what does this all mean? If we step back and look at the journey we've taken today during this deep dive, standing on the skeleton isn't a literal description of bones grinding on bones like a stack of Jenga blocks.
No, not at all.
It's a highly integrated state of being where your deep, hidden muscular network generates a subtle, inward drawing tension. And that tension effortlessly organizes your skeleton into its optimal alignment.
It is the ultimate expression of working smarter, not harder, within your own physical architecture. If we contrast the two realities for you listening one last time, if you rely on the conventional wisdom of pushing and pulling with superficial muscles for your posture, your reality will be excessive chest lifting, a rigid, overextended lower back, tight, locked-up shoulders, and a strained neck that is dominating the work of holding up your head.
Which honestly describes how almost everyone in the modern world feels at the end of a long workday. We're just exhausted from fighting gravity.
Unfortunately, yes. But if you rely on deep structural organization by using preparatory postures to wake up that continuous line of tension from your feet to your diaphragm, your reality completely shifts.
Like this day and night.
It is. You experience minimal perceived effort, a feeling of profound lightness throughout the body, freer, easier breathing because your diaphragm is aligned, spontaneous spinal alignment without forcing it, And an integrated whole body stability.
It is a complete redefinition of what it means to carry yourself through the world. We started this deep dive talking about that universal childhood memory of being yelled at to stand up straight.
Yeah.
We all know the rigid, exhausting feeling of forcing our shoulders back and thrusting our chests out. We do it to look confident, to look healthy, or just to try and stop the nagging pain in our lower backs.
And we do it with the best of intentions, really, using the only mechanical tools we thought we had.
We really do. But I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, drawn from the implications of everything we've just discussed today. If true, deep structural alignment is an emergent property, something that happens spontaneously across a continuous network when we create the right conditions, it makes you wonder about the rest of our modern fitness culture.
That's a very good point.
Are we spending hours in the gym, isolating and overtraining individual superficial muscles, trying to build our bodies part by part, when we should really be focusing on the continuous tensegrity of our entire skeleton?